Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be a $50 deck tech. When I say $50, I mean that is an overall deck cost. Both shipping and commanders that are $10 or less are going to be included in that cost, but basic lands will not be. Decks on this channel are built to be fun, inexpensive, and focused. If you want to learn more about what a focused commander deck is, check out this video here. On this deck tech, I'm going to take you through its strategy, the tactics, and how this deck wins. This show and episodes like this one are possible because of viewers like you. So if you're looking for some easy ways to help support the show, make sure you like this episode and share it with friends. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Thank you to everyone who's already purchased our merchandise, it really does help support the channel. Another easy way to support this channel is by using our TCGplayer affiliate links. So make sure that you're looking for those links in the description whenever you're buying a deck or just individual cards. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today's episode comes to you courtesy of Troy. Troy has been helping support this channel as a general tier patron for over a year now. I truly couldn't do this without the support of amazing patrons like Troy. For Troy's personalized deck tech, he chose Kess Dissident Mage with an infinite theme. Kess is a 3/4 flying human wizard that costs 1 blue, black, red. She has during each of your turns you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. If a card cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Being in Grixis, we've got access to a ton of great instants and sorceries, and Kess essentially gives us the ability to cast them a second time. Also, with this color combination, we've got plenty of great infinite combos to choose from. So what's our strategy with this deck? We're going to dig through our deck, set up, and get extra value from Kess. Kess can easily help us dig deeper, get set up quicker, and help us control the board. Throughout the game, she's going to help us cast a ton of extra spells. And then how do we win with this deck? Well, we're going to combo off in a multitude of ways to win in just one turn. Like I mentioned before, in these colors, we've got access to a ton of powerful combos. But we're going to tackle what those combos are later on in this deck tech. As with all Commander's Quarters decks, I'm going to take you through 10 different tactics that show you how the deck works and how we're going to win with it. So it's time to start off with tactic number 1, Mana Matters. First up, there's Wayfarer's Bauble, which we can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice to search our library for basic land and put in play tapped. And then there's Prismatic Lens, which can tap for colorless or can help us fix our mana. Sphere of the Suns may enter the battlefield tapped, but it can tap for any color 3 times. Next up, there's Star Compass, which also enters the battlefield tapped, but it can tap for any of our colors depending on our land situation. And then Talisman of Creativity can tap for colors or can tap for blue or red, but it deals 1 damage to us. And then Felwar Stone can tap to add 1 mana if any color that a land opponent controls could produce. Next up, we're running all 3 of our signets, each of which we can pay 1 into and tap them for their guild's colors. And finally, we're running Gilded Lotus, which can tap to add 3 mana of any one color. And this card can actually be part of one of our combos if we're set up correctly. But outside of ramping, we've got other ways to help us cast spells. Let's go through those ways in tactic number 2, What a Deal. First up, there's Nightscape Familiar, which makes our blue and red spells we cast cost 1 less to cast. Now, ramping might be great, but reducing the cost of our spells can be even more effective. Doing so can help us cast more spells in a turn than we'd be able to, and it can also help us combo off. So we're also going to be running Goblin Electromancer and Jace's Sanctum. Both of them reduce the cost of our instants and sorceries by 1. Jace's Sanctum also has, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, scry 1. We're running a ton of instants and sorceries, and some of them are even combo pieces in this deck. By reducing their cost, we can make some of our combos easier to implement. But the biggest way that we can reduce their cost is with Arcane Melee. This reduces the cost of all instants and sorceries by 2. Now keep in mind that this does help our opponents as well. But because Kess also lets us cast them from our graveyard, we're going to take the most advantage of this. The amount of mana that these all can save us throughout the game can be huge. And again, they're going to let us combo in ways that we otherwise wouldn't be able to. But how do we actually get to our combo pieces? Let's go through some ways that can help us in tactic number 3, Play in the Yard. First up, we're running Careful Study and Faithless Looting, which each let us draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Even simple spells like these can provide a ton of value in this deck. If we discard any instants or sorceries, we still have access to those thanks to our commander. And again, with Kess in play, we can cast each of these again from our graveyard for just 1. And then we're running an essentially free version of these with Frantic Search. It does the exact same thing, but on top of that, it lets us untap up to 3 lands. And if we have one of our cost reducers out there, or if we have a land that taps for more than 1, this can actually net us mana. Next up, there's Is It Charm, which is a very flexible card in this deck. We can use it to counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2, deal 2 damage to target creature, or we can draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. There are plenty of situations where this card can be very useful. And finally, we're running Fact or Fiction, which says reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those into 2 piles, put 1 pile into your hand and the other to your graveyard. Thanks to our commander, all these spells become even better in this deck. Not only can we cast them a second time, but we can also take advantage of the cards they put into the graveyard. But outside of using these cards to dig, we've got some cards that can help us get specific pieces. So let's move on to tactic number 4, A Simple Search. First up, there's Mystical Teachings, which lets us tutor for an instant or card with flash and put into our hand. Because we can cast this at instant speed, it can help us get that right piece that we need right before our turn and help us win out of nowhere. We've also got some more specific tutors with Perplex, Clutch of the Undercity, and Brain Spoil. Each of these cards has Transmute, which can be a very effective way to tutor. Let's use Perplex as an example. By paying 1 blue-black, we can discard Perplex and search our library for a card with the same converted mana cost as Perplex and put it into our hand. We've got plenty of combo pieces at 3, 4, and 5 mana, so each of these have some great targets. And being able to tutor for one of our pieces for just 3 mana is huge. Next up, there's Diabolic Tutor, which can tutor for any card for just 4 mana. So it sacrifices some of that cost efficiency, but it lets us get anything. A tutor that costs slightly more but can be especially effective in this deck is Increasing Ambition. If we cast this card from our hand, it lets us tutor for 1, but if we cast it from our graveyard, we get to tutor for 2 cards. Now, normally to get that effect, you'd have to cast this for its flashback cost of 7 and a black. But with Kess in play, remember that we can just get around this by paying its normal mana cost. So the optimal play for this card is probably to discard it and then try to cast it from our graveyard. And tutoring for 2 cards for just 5 mana is an incredible deal. And this leads us to our golden pick of the deck, which is our number 1 card out of our 99. And the golden pick for this deck is Final Parting. It's a sorcery for 3 black, and it says search your library for 2 cards, put 1 into your hand and the other into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. This card is absolutely absurd in this deck. Just on its own, it can essentially set us up to combo. One of our 2 combo pieces we won't be able to cast from our graveyard, so we'll just put into our hand. And the other one that we can, we'll put into our graveyard. Thanks to our commander, we're going to have access to that card. And because of that, Final Parting is essentially a 5 mana tutor for 2 cards that we can use. And unlike Increasing Ambition, it doesn't need to be in our graveyard to get that kind of value. Depending on our current setup, this can get the best combo for us in the situation that we're in. And if we just need 1 combo piece, we can get something else to protect that combo as well. So this card can be extremely powerful and very flexible. It can set us up to win out of absolutely nowhere, and that's what makes it the golden pig. But what are these combos that we've been talking about? Let's go through some of them now in tactic number 5, Infinite Possibilities. Now there are a lot of interchangeable parts to these combos, but let's just start with one example. The basic premise of this first combo revolves around Archaeomancer, Ghostly Flicker, and Peregrine Drake. When Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, we return target instant or sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand. Ghostly Flicker says, exile 2 artifacts, creatures, and/or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. And Peregrine Drake says, when it enters the battlefield, untap up to 5 lands. So essentially the combo goes like this. We use Ghostly Flicker to blink both Archaeomancer and Peregrine Drake. When Archaeomancer comes back into play, it's going to get Ghostly Flicker back from our graveyard to our hand. And when Peregrine Drake comes into play, we're going to untap 5 lands. We're then going to tap those 5 lands for 5 mana. With 3 of it, we're going to cast Ghostly Flicker again and blink our 2 creatures again. Archaeomancer will come back into play, getting us back Ghostly Flicker, and Peregrine Drake will untap our 5 lands again. So we're at the exact same place that we just were, but we have 2 extra mana floating. Essentially, every single time we repeat this process, we've got 2 extra mana. So essentially, this combo gives us 3 things: infinite mana, infinite cast triggers, and infinite into the battlefield triggers too. We'll go through the cards that these use to actually finish off our opponents later. For now, let's take a look at the variations. Archaeomancer can be replaced by a few creatures, including Mnemonic Wall, Salvager of Secrets, Izzet Chronarch, and Possessed Scab. And if we somehow need it, Possessed Scab can actually get us a creature back instead. Ghostly Flicker can be replaced by Displace and Illusionist Stratagem. And Illusionist Stratagem can help you draw your entire deck as well. Peregrine Drake really doesn't have a direct replacement, but it can work with Cloud of Fairies in the right situation. When Cloud of Fairies comes into play, we untap 2 lands. Now that's not enough to cast Ghostly Flicker, Displace, or Illusionist Stratagem on its own. But if we have some of those cost reducers, or if we've got lands that tap for more than 1, we can do it. In this scenario, if we can make Illusionist Stratagem just cost a blue, it works in the same way. In a similar way, if we've got a cost reducer in play, we can actually get infinite mana with Gilded Lotus as well. But that actually only works with Ghostly Flicker because it's the only one that can blink an artifact. Infinite mana isn't always a requirement for us to win though, so just keep that in mind as well. A similar combo, but just with 2 cards, comes with Deadeye Navigator. It has Soulbond, and as long as it's paired with another creature, each of those creatures has to pay 1 in a blue, exile this creature, then return to the battlefield under your control. So when you pair this with Peregrine Drake, you can pay 1 in a blue to blink it. When Peregrine Drake comes back into play, you're untapping 5 lands, and every single time you do this, you net 3 mana. So with this, you essentially get infinite mana and infinite into the battlefield triggers. This even works with Cloud of Fairies. At a base level, you can at least get infinite ETBs. But if you've got a land that taps for more than 1, then you can get infinite mana as well. But we're not quite done with combos just yet. So let's move on to tactic number 6, Infinite Promise. Again, with these combos, there's some interchangeable parts, but let's just go through an example first. When Narumeha Master Wizard enters the battlefield, you copy target instant or sorcery spell you control, and you may choose new targets for the copy. In combination with Ghostly Flicker, this can do a variety of things for you. But first, let's talk about how you actually combo. First, you're going to cast Ghostly Flicker, target any 2 artifacts, creatures, and/or lands you control. Then you're going to cast Narumeha and copy Ghostly Flicker. With that copy of Ghostly Flicker, you're going to target Narumeha and one of your lands. Make sure that you choose one of your lands that comes into play untapped. Narumeha and that land are both going to blink and come back into play. That land comes back into play untapped, so you can tap it for mana. And then when Narumeha comes back into play, you're going to copy that original Ghostly Flicker, which is still on the stack. This again creates a copy that can target her and that land again. You're essentially going to repeat this process over and over again to make infinite mana and infinite ETBs. Again, this by itself doesn't actually win you the game, but we will go through those cards that do here in a bit. This combo actually works with a better version of Narumeha, which is Dualcaster Mage. Dualcaster Mage does the exact same thing, but it only costs 3 mana instead of 4, and it's not legendary. Now for the combo with Ghostly Flicker, that legendary part doesn't matter, but for some other ones it will. One of those combos is with Cackling Counterpart. It says create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. So this combo is going to be pretty similar to the last one. We're going to cast Cackling Counterpart targeting any one of our creatures. While it's still on the stack, we're going to cast Dualcaster Mage to copy it. With that copy, we're going to target Dualcaster Mage. That's going to create a token copy of Dualcaster Mage, and its ETB is going to trigger. We're again going to target the original Cackling counterpart, which is still in the stack. We can keep doing this over and over again as many times as we want. We essentially end up with an infinite number of Dualcaster Mage tokens. Narmeha can do the same thing, but since she's legendary, those tokens are going to die. But we can even win in certain ways with that effect. Cackling counterpart actually has a replacement with quasi-duplicate. Just keep in mind that this one is at sorcery speed. A way that we can actually use tokens to win right away is with Twin Flame. It's going to create an infinite number of tokens with haste. Now we do have to exile those tokens at the beginning of the next end step, but that's not going to happen since our opponents are going to be dead. Yet another combo that we can use is with Baral's Expertise. First, we're going to cast it targeting whatever we want. While it's still in the stack, we're going to cast Dualcaster Mage targeting it. With a copy of Baral's Expertise, we're going to target Dualcaster Mage and 2 other things. Then we can cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from our hand without paying its mana cost. Since Dualcaster Mage will be back in our hand, we're going to choose that. When Dualcaster Mage comes back into play, we're going to target that original Baral's Expertise again. We can repeat this process as many times as we want. We're essentially getting infinite ETB triggers, and we can bounce as many artifacts and/or creatures we want to. And our final combo, which is somewhat similar, involves Release to the Wind. It says exile target non-land permanent for as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may cast it without paying its mana cost. So basically we cast Release to the Wind targeting anything. We then cast Dualcaster Mage to make a copy of Release to the Wind. With that copy of Release to the Wind, we target Dualcaster Mage. We can then cast Dualcaster Mage for free from exile and target that original Release to the Wind. So again, this basically doesn't really do anything except for give us infinite ETBs. Just a quick note, many of these combos were actually handled in further detail in my Annalise deck tech, so if you want to see more of their interactions here, go ahead and check that out. But how do we actually win with all these infinite interactions? So now let's move on to tactic number 7, Infinite Loss. First up, there's Drowned Secrets, which says, whenever you cast a blue spell, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. So basically any of those combos that involve casting a blue spell over and over again will trigger this. With this in play, we can easily mill out all of our opponents at once. This can also help us earlier in the game by getting cards into our graveyard too. And then we're running Rattlestorm Conduit. It says, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Rattlestorm Conduit deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Because this triggers off of both casting and copying, it works with a ton of our combos. Other ways to ping down our opponents come with Impact Tremors and Warstorm Surge. Impact Tremors says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. And Warstorm Surge says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Since all of our combos involve creatures coming into play, they'll work with either of these. And Sage's Row Denizen will work with any of them except for Dualcaster Mage. It says, whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. But 2 more pieces that work with any of our combos are Outpost Siege and Veil of the Nightclad. Outpost Siege says, whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to our creature or player. And Veil says, whenever Veil of the Nightclad or another creature you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. Finally, Cut to Ribbons will work with any of our combos that generate infinite mana. We can cast ribbons for whatever X value we want, and each opponent will lose that much life. But what are some ways that we can protect our key pieces and our combo? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 8, Key Save. First up, there's Wizard's Retort, which costs 1 less if we control a wizard, and it says counter target spell. So essentially with our commander in play, this is just as good as counterspell. Next up, there's another great counterspell with Negate, which says counter target non-creature spell. And then we're running Unwind, which does the same, but it's also going to untap up to 3 lands. Finally, there's Rewind, which says counter target spell, untap up to 4 lands. Again, if we have lands that tap for more than 1, or if we've got some of our cost reducers in play, this will even net us mana. But what happens though if we need to get some of our key pieces back? It's time for us to move on to tactic number 9, Never Say Die. First up, there's Corpse Churn, which says put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this can help us get more cards into our graveyard on top of getting us one of our key creatures back. We can actually directly get a creature back into play though with Concoct. It says Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And finally, there's Ill-Gotten Gains, which can get us back multiple pieces. We have to exile it, but each player discards their hand, then returns up to 3 cards from their graveyard to their hand. This card can come in huge by getting us exactly what we need back to win. But on top of doing our own thing, we need to make sure that we can deal with our opponent's strategy too. Let's go through some ways to throw a wrench into their plans, and tactic number 10, Go Away. First up, there's Whelming Wave, which is going to bounce all creatures except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. So basically this just bounces all creatures for 4 mana. With a bounce effect like this, we can really abuse that in this deck too. We can get this back with a creature like our Chaomancer and recast it, and then recast that creature again. We can just keep repeating this to keep the board clear as long as we need to. This kind of strategy can also work really well with Aether Gale, which is going to return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this can keep the right things on the board that we want to keep there and bounce the things we don't. But a way to bounce everything comes with Devastation Tide. It says return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands, and it's got Miracle for 1 in a blue. For some targeted removal though, we've got Chaos Warp. It says the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. This is a fantastic way to pretty much get rid of any problematic permanent. And finally, we're running Rakdos Charm, which is very flexible. It says choose 1, exile all cards from target player's graveyard, destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. In a game of Commander, all these modes can be very effective. Kess Dissident Mage can be an extremely powerful commander, especially when you build around infinite combos. Again, a big thanks to Troy for supporting this channel for over a year as a general tier patron. If you also want to support this channel or want your own deck tech dedicated to you, consider becoming a patron. But now that we've gone through the spells in this deck, let's go on to the mana base. First up, we're running Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, both of which we can tap and sacrifice to search our library for basic land and put in play tapped. Then there's Command Tower, which can tap for any of our colors. Next up, there's Exotic Orchard, which can tap to add 1 mana if any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. And then Crumbling Necropolis can tap for any of our colors, but it comes into play tapped. And then we're running 5 lands that each enter the battlefield tapped and tap for blue or black. Next up, we've got 3 lands that enter the battlefield tapped and tap for blue or red. And then we've got 3 lands that each enter the battlefield tapped, bounce land back to our hand, and tap for 2 of our colors. Next up, we've got Vivid Creek, Vivid Marsh, and Vivid Crag, which each come into play with 2 charge counters on them. They each can tap for 1 of our colors, or we can tap and remove a charge counter from them to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. And then there's Sunscorched Desert, which when it comes into play deals 1 damage to target player, and it taps for colorless. Finally, we're running 15 basic lands. 8 of those will be islands, 4 will be swamps, and 3 will be mountains. And now that we've gone through every single card in this deck, let's do a quick price check. A quick reminder that our deck costs are calculated using TCGplayer optimization, optimizing with even heavily played and damaged cards because those cards need a home too. The average Kess EDH rec deck will set you back $732.07. Our deck is going to be much more affordable, coming in at just $49.60. Again, the price of this deck is the price that I got for it on the day that I'm recording. If you want to see a breakdown of this deck's cost, check out the link in the description. Keep in mind that prices can and will fluctuate and change over time. But with these deck costs, I want to be as transparent as I possibly can. Again, Commander's Quarters decks are about to be tuned and focused within their budget, but there are always ways that we can improve on them. So let's go through some reasonable upgrades now to see what some of those ways just might be. First up, let's add in Heat Shimmer and take out Corpse Churn. Heat Shimmer is another fantastic combo piece for this deck like Twin Flame. Next up, we're going to add in Cold Steel Heart and take out Star Compass. Cold Steel Heart can just be a more effective mana rock early in the game. And then we're going to add in Talisman of Indulgence and take out Sphere of the Suns. It's just a much more effective mana rock overall. So likewise, we're also going to add in Talisman of Dominance and take out Prismatic Lens. The Talisman cycle of mana rocks is a fantastic one. Next up, let's add in Panharmonicon and take out Devastation Tide. Panharmonicon can really just help us out by doubling up all of our ETBs. And finally, let's add in Dire Undercurrents and take out Veil of the Nightclad. It can generate us a ton of value and can even be a finisher too. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this deck tech are. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Links to our social media accounts can be found in the description. Also in the description below is a link to the Commander's Quarters Patreon page, and I just want to say a quick thank you to the patrons who have subscribed so far. There are many benefits to being a patron for the Commander's Quarters, including being able to vote on future Commanders for deck techs. There's even a general level tier where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. I truly couldn't do this without all of your support, so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget Commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.